And the affirmation for this principle of manifestation is, I deserve to experience divine abundance, for I am a part of God. And of course, the universe is abundant. It is endless. This intelligence that I've been speaking about is endless and abundant. And you, therefore, also are abundant and are deserving of that abundance. But there's a lot of stuff that has come your way that has worked to convince you that this isn't true. And what I want to do here in this principle is to help you to recognize not only your own divinity, but that whatever comes your way, you are entitled to. And that there's nothing selfish about having a desire. This idea that somehow there's an incompatibility with desiring abundance in your life, or desiring healing, or desiring anything in your life. You know, you can't create without a desire. You can't have anything without a desire. Even the desire to be desireless is a desire. And this idea that we don't have desires is really it's a hallucination. It's a myth that somehow I shouldn't be wanting things. You are a part of the endlessness and the abundance of this divine universe. And you are not incompatible with prosperity and joy and wealth and fulfillment. This is something that you not only can ask for, but are entitled to. And you must know that. Someone mailed this to me that I thought I'd share this with you. It's called I Am Lost. It says, a woman is dying of AIDS. A priest is summoned. He attempts to comfort her, but to no avail. I am lost, she said. I have ruined my life and every life around me. Now I'm going painfully to hell. There's no hope for me. The priest saw a framed picture of a pretty girl on the dresser. Who is this, he asked. The woman brightened. She is my daughter, the one beautiful thing in my life. And would you help her if she was in trouble or made a mistake? Would you forgive her? Would you still love her? Of course I would, cried the woman. I would do anything for her. Why do you ask such a question? Because I want you to know, said the priest, that God has a picture of you on his dresser. And I think that picturing ourselves this way, with all of the problems that we have had, the things that we feel bad about, the mistakes that we may have made, the people that we may have hurt, all of these kinds of things have a tendency to make us feel unworthy. There's a lot of people who think, I'm going to be able to manifest what I want in my life as soon as I am no longer an addict, or as soon as I am no longer fat, or as soon as I remove all of these problems I have in this relationship. When I get rid of all of this, when this all goes, then I will feel worthy. And it's almost like you have to shift that consciousness around and come at it from a different perspective, which says, I love myself while I am fat. I love myself while I'm an addict. I love myself regardless of what it is that I may have seen as something that I shouldn't be. That God does have a picture of me on his dresser, is the metaphor as well. And what it does is it fills you with this kind of unconditional love that I'll be talking about a little bit later in one of the later principles. But you begin to say, yes, I am worthy. And I'll tell you when you feel most worthy of what it is that you would like to be able to manifest. You see, if you feel unworthy, what you do is you block the flow. And remember, there's an energy. There's a flowing of energy in everything. That's what manifesting is. And the idea that somehow I shouldn't have this or there's something wrong with it, that immediately puts you into a feeling or a space of being separate from this thing that you want to manifest. It's like you put up that blockage. Someone asked the question, does God have this for me? Does God want that for me? And almost always when we ask that question, we make an assumption. We're coming from that ego assumption that God and I are separate. And the same thing is true when you're feeling unworthy. what you're really saying is that God has made a mistake here. And there are no mistakes. And this divine intelligence is everywhere. And it's a theme that will run through this entire program. This idea that what I want to manifest has the same divine intelligence in it that is in me and that is in everything. So I'm realigning myself. But you can't realign yourself if you feel like what you would like to have come to you, that you aren't worthy of it. You have to know that you are as worthy of anything showing up in your life as anyone else is on the planet. The essence of this is that you have to be at peace. And being at peace is what enlightenment is. As my teacher told me, enlightenment is being immersed in and surrounded by peace. That's the definition of enlightenment. And it is also what the higher intelligence or the sacred part of you or the higher self always wants. It just wants you to be at peace. Nothing else. It's not asking any more. When you feel unworthy, you're not at peace. The ego has taken over this idea somehow that you have certain obligations, you have to behave in certain ways, you have to fulfill the obligations of your conditioning or of the tribe. That's what starts to take over, and you've got to let go of that.
I want to read you just a few things from the Wahoo Ching, and this is all about meaning. Dissolving the mind is a matter of not doing. Simply avoid becoming attached to what you see and think. Now, this is one of the most important lines in the Wahoo Ching. Relinquish the notion that you are separated from the all-knowing mind of the universe. Relinquish the notion that you are separated from the all-knowing mind of the universe, which is what I spoke about with the ego. You've got to relinquish that idea. The all-knowing mind of the universe, God, is not only something that you are connected to, it is something that you are. Carry that inner vision around. The idea that you could somehow be separated from God is a complete and total illusion. Then you can recover your original, pure insight and see through all illusions. Remember, because clarity and enlightenment are within your own nature, they are regained without moving an inch. This is really powerful. I always go back to remind myself of that. Because clarity and enlightenment are within your own nature, they are regained without moving an inch. Now here's the big kicker from the Wahoo Ching. If you correct your mind, the rest of your life will fall into place. That is, all of your addictions, all of your overweightedness, all of your poisons, all of your pain, if you correct your mind, everything else will fall into place. The 23 pounds that I took off in 29 days, I attribute to not eating sugar, and I wanted to talk about that here when we talked about returning to your original nature. I think it's because I corrected my mind. See, if you correct your mind, that's when you know when you're over an addiction. One of my favorite people that I've come to know is President Reagan's daughter, Patty Davis. You knew it wasn't the others, didn't you? Those of you know about it. I mean, she's the scurvy elephant. And she was a cocaine addict, severe. And she wrote an essay in Newsweek magazine about how she quit cocaine. And she said she tried everything. She tried not disappointing herself. She tried not disappointing her father, who was the President of the United States. She tried not disappointing her mother, but her mother was always disappointed in her, she said. And then she said, I finally got to a place in my life, and that was the conclusion of it. And I took this out and I sent it to my daughter, who has struggled with drugs, and she read it to everybody in the unit that she was staying in at the time. She said, I finally decided that I no longer wanted to disappoint God. Now remember, I'm not talking about God in a religious context here, in the sense of this is a specific religion that has been handed to you. She might just as well have said, I no longer wanted to disappoint the highest place that I am, my highest self. I didn't want to stay misaligned any longer. And by realigning herself with her God nature and realizing that you can never be separate from God, from your source, from your divinity, and relinquishing that idea of your separation from it, by doing that, you correct your mind. And as you correct your mind, that's like when we were talking about the sugar thing, if you correct your mind about that, this is going to be really easy. And as you do that, it's not like I'm tempted, but I'm not going to. It's like the temptation is gone because you're home. You're back home. You're in the place of well-being. Make me an instrument, if you want to pray, of thy well-being. And of thy well-being. That from which I originated. Okay. So, more important than that, if you correct your mind, the rest of your life will fall into place. This is true because the mind is the governing aspect of a human life. If the river flows clearly and cleanly through the proper channel, all will be well along its banks. The integral way, the way of meaning, depends on decreasing, not increasing. To correct your mind, rely on not doing. Stop thinking and clinging to complications. Keep your mind detached and whole. Eliminate mental muddiness and obscurity. Keep your mind crystal clear. Avoid daydreaming and allow your pure, original insight to emerge. Quiet your emotions and abide in serenity.
Listen to these words, recorded during a 1967 lecture given by an initiatic science master, Omram Mikhail Ivanov of Bulgaria. Quote, "The Creator has planted within every creature a fragment of himself, a spark, a spirit of the same nature as himself. And thanks to this spirit, every creature can become a creator. And this means that instead of always waiting for their needs to be satisfied by some external source, human beings can work inwardly by means of their thought, their will, and their spirit to obtain the nourishing, healing elements they need. This is why the teaching I bring you is of the Spirit, of the Creator, and not of matter." Unquote. I love this quote because it speaks to a part of you that has been largely ignored throughout all of your educational pursuits and accomplishments. The key words here are a fragment of himself, a spark that lies within you, but has largely been left unexamined. This is a great image for you to begin to understand the greatness of your higher self. There is a spark of God within you that is the invisibleness I've been alluding to. It is that which you cannot grasp with the senses. It beats your heart, it grows your hair, and it keeps your lungs breathing in and out. You've become accustomed to taking it for granted while putting the major focus of your life on the physical, that is the unreal part of you. My objective in this chapter and the next is to inspire you to recognize that a spark, a tiny fragment of the creative source of the universe, is located within you, and to help you increase the power of that spark so it becomes the primary force in your everyday life. Review the first chapter and affirm your willingness to change your concept of yourself to help you recognize and increase that spark. Then dedicate yourself to exploring this higher self that I'm talking about. Your higher self is that spark, but a spark is an infinitesimal portion of your physical being. If you weigh, say, 150 pounds, that spark weighs maybe 1/100th of an ounce or 1/1,000,000th of an ounce. This is only a symbolic image because the spark is unchanging. But I'm encouraging you to conceptualize that spark of God inside of you. Imagine it growing to double its size, then a tenfold spark, then maybe a shred, then a segment, then a chunk, then a lump, then a piece, then a section. And just perceive that spark of God as the real you becoming visible through your loving and inviting attentiveness until you feel the sacred presence of your higher self as the guiding light of your life. Ultimately, as I'll talk about later, It will overtake the you that's been dominated by an ego and your sensory apparatus. That former speck of a spark will become the foundation of your life. You might conceptualize this former spark as a sacred light inside of your head that is the same size as your brain. Now you've had a big piece of God to assist you in attaining a status wherein the fulfillment of your wishes becomes a no-brainer, or perhaps you'd call it a new-brainer. This new brain is comprised exclusively of infinite God energy. In order to accomplish becoming an almighty being, your higher self, that is God, must be enlarged from a spark to a more meaningful portion of your essence. Since you are a piece of God, and therefore have that within you, you needn't doubt your own divinity. As Jesus reminds you in the New Testament, "Is it not written in your law, I have said, you are gods?" That's from the book of John 10:34. As a growing spark of God, you must be willing to say, that portion of myself that has not edged God out, that is ego, must be perfect. It is all-knowing and it is almighty. There is nothing that this higher self, that I am, cannot accomplish. Once again, let's look back at something Jesus told us. Quote, "With God, all things are possible." That's in the book of Matthew 19:26. All things are possible leaves nothing out. As my teachers in the initiatic sciences frequently reminded me, this higher self, that portion of God that is us, only begins to notice us and give us the attention we crave when we enlarge it from a tiny spark and invite that energy into our life. Your awareness that God isn't something external to you, but rather a portion of yourself, is truly a giant step in your spiritual evolution. You can tell yourself with genuine knowing, I am perfect. All forms of I am have tremendous significance. God no longer resides outside of you and no longer plays favorites. In short, you've revised humankind's image of a God created in its own egoistic idea of itself. A God who knows how to heal, yet withholds healing from some and offers it to others who are presumed to have paid some kind of dues. A God who is angry. A God who gives humans the pleasure of sexuality, but promises to burn in hell those who don't follow rules devised by other humans. A God who gives us eyes and remains invisible, but threatens damnation for those who don't believe in him. A God who demands to be paid for services with fancy temples and gold-lined costumes for his highest representative. This is a God of the ego. Your higher self is a piece of an all-loving, all-embracing, creative source. All you need do is accept that this is not something external to yourself. It resides within you. The kingdom of heaven is within. In fact, it is you. And all you need do is begin to align yourself with this divine essence. Begin to act like it acts and think like it thinks. And you will begin the process of manifesting just as it does. This is the true essence of living a life in which your wishes are fulfilled, giving your divine nature a chance.